Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
Neoliberals have looked for like 1,000 different ways of rebranding because fundamentally their ideology has failed and is dead. Jeez. Everyone is turning away from it at like a record speed. I literally found a tweet for this. Hold on. It's neoliberalism. It's supply-side liberalism. It's the new left. It's third way. It's meritocracy. It's public-private partnerships. It's corporate.
Remember, whenever you feel upset and ass-pained, like I'm feeling right now, that a socialist is talking like this, remember, okay, Das Kapital and Marxist philosophy wasn't saying that like we need to overthrow capitalism, that we need to do something to get to uproot this capital system. Marx said that capitalism will naturally lead to a socialist state of affairs, that it is inevitable that a capitalist system will collapse and it will eventually give way to a socialist system. And he believed that in the year like 1850, okay? So whenever these guys are shitting on your system, remember, their leader, who's been dead for over 100 years, okay, he thought that socialism would inevitably come from the death throes of capitalism, okay? And he thought that 200 years ago, so fuck him.
Corporate social responsibility. It's pragmatic liberalism. It's growth and fairness economy. It's popularism. It's opportunity economy. It's abundance liberalism. It's the same thing. It's always the same thing. Can you quickly sum up neoliberalism, please? Neoliberalism is when there's some...
What's he gonna say? I haven't listened to Voush in so long, so I can't predict his talking points so much. Neoliberalism is when rich people get really rich, but they give you slightly shinier products to try to convince you that you're doing as good as they are. Something like that.
And I don't like it, is the main thing.
Oh,
I thought that was fascism. Well, you repeat yourself. The abundance liberal thing it's a complete psyop. It's a complete psyop. Article from the fucking Economist. Okay, like neoliberals recognize everyone hates them. So what do we do to rebrand in opposition to Trump's current administration? Well, Trump's current administration seems to be, funnily enough, all about austerity, right? Americans will face hardship, tariffs will increase the price of goods, eggs cost too much, inflation, etc., etc., etc. You will have less. So what if we rebrand it as like, no, actually, you know, Howard Lutnick thinks you shouldn't get cheap treats from China. I think you should get cheap treats from China. You know, I think that actually the market should be allowed to run in such a way that things stay cheap and you get whatever you want. But it doesn't fix the underlying problems at all, because what they're arguing for, unfettered markets, free trade, etc., is what we've been doing for decades. Like what they're arguing for basically is, well, what if we did NAFTA and didn't have tariffs? And it's like, well, we had that for years.
Why does he not watch Voush for so long? I think because Voush is another one of my creations. Voush largely inherited my based stance on not saying America bad all the time. So I think we mostly agreed on like Ukraine, so we didn't watch him there. And then he's kind of been in his own little world. He had like the Fortress arc. So he just kind of like does his own thing. So he doesn't like intersect with the other political world too much. So we just don't watch as much.
And then we got Trump. We literally did that, and it created the conditions that produced this mess. Hold on, I found a Fox 5 on this. What is an abundance liberal? Fox 5, Washington, D.C. Please, just, why not? Pitch it at me.
My guest is the editor-in-chief of Washington Monthly and a former speechwriter for President Bill Clinton. His latest piece, The Meager Agenda of Abundance Liberals, explores...
Of course it would be a former speechwriter of Bill Clinton.
The challenges facing progressive policymakers after their disastrous 2024 election. Paul Glastrus up late with me tonight again here on The Final.
But I mean, don't socialists literally argue everyone can have free healthcare, have the same quality of life, same consumer goods, free housing, etc.? All we have to do is tax the rich and let workers own the means of production. They kind of do. This is one of the reasons why I appreciated when Richard Wolff said it, because at least he was honest about it. Didn't Richard Wolff say something along the lines of like, you might not get that PS5 as quickly as you want or something? At least he was honest about it, you know. Pretty sure he doubled down on the Fortress arc. Yeah, I think he did. But I mean, ultimately it worked out for him. If the direction he wanted to take his content was just kind of doing these, because I think he streams less now and he doesn't do like debates or anything with any other people. But like, I think his live viewership is generally pretty good. And I think his monthly views are pretty good. So, I mean, it's working out for him.
105. Paul, welcome.
Was that a joke? No, it wasn't a joke. Somebody can go find the clever video if you want. How many of these do I need? 86, 84. Okay.
Back to the show.
Jim, my friend, glad to be back.
What is an abundance liberal?
There's a whole group of writers and think tank scholars who are arguing that if we get rid of government red tape, things like zoning restrictions, environmental statutes, that we can have abundance, we can have more housing, more green energy, cheaper, quicker transportation projects, lower healthcare costs. People like Ezra Klein of the New York Times, Matt Iglesias, the
just great
Substack writer, a lot of people at The Atlantic like Yoni Applebaum.
Me when I'm pitching a brand new style of liberalism that'll definitely work. Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias. Just, obviously.
Groups like the Niskanen Center. This is their big thing, and they're making a big push, and they're getting a whole lot of attention in the media and from Democratic donors and elected officials.
Right before I came in here to talk with you, I saw Ezra Klein up on one of the cable networks. Here's the thing. What you're talking about in the piece.
All right. Final question to you, Professor Wolf. Under your system of worker cooperatives, would I still get my PlayStation 5?
Absolutely. You'd have to struggle a little bit for it. You'd have to talk to your fellow workers. You'd have to talk about the distribution of income. You'd have to compare your desire for PlayStation against all the other interests of all the other people. It wouldn't be something you worked out on your own with your particular boss in any way. It would have to be a democratic decision. You'd have to come to terms with that, the way you do with democratic decisions now in our society, to the extent that we have them. And I would like to add only that if Steve is interested, he could also look at the experience with COVID that the Cubans had, because it is in many ways even better than the ones that the Vietnamese had.
Cubans are built different. Because the vast majority they get aborted, so only the strongest of the Cuban race survives. I'm not joking. Their abortion rates are by far the highest in the world.
Here, the progressives today, and you kind of laid that out.
They're
focusing more on removing barriers than actively shaping what economic policy should look like.
Because again, they're just neoliberals. They're just more neoliberal. It's just the same neoliberals. They're just coming up with a new term for it. It's the exact same thing. It's the same thing. But I see people talk. I think it's mostly a meme. It's mostly a buzzword. But let this serve as a broader warning. Don't let liberals take the reins of what is happening here. Don't let liberals be the ones to define for you what went wrong and what needs to happen. These are the same people who think that Bernie Sanders represents a naive, antiquated form of political thought that no longer has a place in DC. Like, these are the same people who think that progressives are at best naive and at worst are just as bad as the MAGA Republicans. These are the people who created the problems that we're experiencing right now, created the conditions, nullified the Democrats so they're unable to do anything about Trump. They're not our friends.
Wow.
How is this different from Democrats we've seen in the past, from President Clinton, from President Obama, others?
I think it's got some similarities to what you saw in the Clinton administration with...
How is this different from neoliberalism? Well, funny you asked. It actually has a lot in common with neoliberalism. Now, so first of all, I must acknowledge, it's pretty much just...
I guess, like, the frustrating thing is, I'm curious if you were to ask somebody like Voush might, because he's not as dumb or bad faith as the rest of them. Like, if you were to ask some of these people, like, did we get anything good from capitalism? I think they would say, yeah, there were some good things maybe. So I feel like the next step should be, okay, well, how do we figure out how to get those good things while minimizing some of the bad things? Like, is there a way to do that? Wouldn't this be like the way to go, maybe? Use the restroom 1 second.
Reinventing government, taking away procedural barriers that keep civil servants from doing their jobs, deregulation of the airline industry and the trucking industry under Jimmy Carter, the financial industry. I think there's a lot of overlap between past Democratic administrations and what these folks are talking about, and that's why they're hitting a nerve. A lot of Democratic donors and elected officials are feeling like the Biden administration was too far left. I'm
on a 10-minute delay, but a private tech company hired me as an intern when I was in uni and had me digitize their personnel files, and I did it all incorrectly, and no one noticed or did any oversight. Why'd you f it up? What?
Feeling like the Biden administration was too far left.
Jesus In Christ, Jesus Christ.
That deregulation might be a way forward.
Would you imagine, in your time when you...
By the way, the reason they call this...
It sucks that this guy is describing it this way, and I know Voush is going to attack it this way, but like describing these the abundance guys as like just deregulation, I really don't like that framing, because typically when you say deregulation, the implication is you're talking about like lower taxes or just making it easier for, I guess, billionaires or whatever to make money. When in reality, the deregulation that they're talking about isn't really deregulation. It's just making the state run more efficiently, right? So when they talk about deregulation, they're saying like, what do we need to get out of the way? Like what bureaucratic red tape is there that's keeping us from finishing rail in California? Or why can't we run, some of these state programs more effectively or efficiently? Or why can't we build more housing or zone for more housing or upzone for more housing? Like why can't we do public transport in all of our cities? This is the type of regulatory stuff they're talking about, not like, how do we lower taxes and make it easier for billionaires or huge businesses to like destroy the environment,
Abundance liberalism is because they are cynical and they...
Do you ever think that free trade might make it easier for people to ignore worker rights for maximum profit by making products in the third world and selling to the first and collecting the difference between the third world wages and the first world consumer market? Not generally. I think generally, empirically, free trade tends to be better for workers in other markets, because usually what will happen is when you're carving these trade agreements, you don't want your domestic manufacturing to be so grossly non-competitive that you usually advocate for worker rights on the countries that you're negotiating against. Now, that might sound like a capitalist pipe dream, and I'm not saying corporations do it out of the goodness of their heart, but I know that Vietnam was on the verge of some of their largest labor reforms ever in order to comply with the standards that were being set by the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, that deal ended up not coming into existence for a variety of reasons, but typically when you're engaged in these big bilateral or multilateral trade agreements, you usually are trying to make it so that the workers on the other side are being taken care of better, because it's usually a bit of a disadvantage for the corporate entity there, which usually advantages your own domestic manufacturing.
They hate you, and they chose that term to mimic the style of left populist rhetoric.
Okay.
Like they are deliberately dishonest. Yeah, it's a bait and switch. They chose that term because they want some of the clout of the actual left-leaning people who are making arguments in favor of like Medicare for all or whatever, when in reality they're to the right of most Democrats.
Worked with President Clinton, that somebody like Joe Biden would be considered to be too far left, too progressive?
No. And never did I imagine that the editor of the Washington Monthly, a moderate publication, that it favors taking on corporate power and interests and is a little bit suspicious of this whole deregulatory move, would be considered a left-wing guy, because, that's not what the magazine has been. That's not what I was been. But today, our critique of this whole abundance liberal thing is, even if you did everything that they said, it would not.
When you're talking about stuff that you think is controversial, do you ever think about clips that are going to go around and adjust your speech based on that? If I'm talking about like a super hairy topic, maybe. But at this point in my career, I kind of acknowledge that you can't protect yourself from all the clipping. So, you just kind of roll with the memes.
Not move the needle much to bring us more housing, more affordable energy, that we have bigger problems than that. I think they're right about the reform agenda. They're just very narrow in what they would do. They're kind of...
Destiny caught up. Unironically, I fucked it up because I didn't realize you could scan docs together, so I was scanning them all as separate one-page PDFs. Nice. I'm almost done with a server farm downstairs in my studio. I've chained together like 50 different, I think they're 4090s, so that one day, once this is all connected and up and running, I'll be able to run Adobe and edit and play with PDFs without it lagging like a motherfucker. Holy shit. How do we not have an alternative format to PDF yet? F that file format and f Adobe.
Afraid to go after the real problem, which is this combination of oligarchic control of the economy meets conservative destruction of the government. That's what we're actually experiencing now. And, getting rid of unnecessary procedures is helpful but not sufficient.
All right, so
There is an element of truth to this. Sean just donated on that. We can hate on neoliberalism, but Ezra Klein's right about this. He's not arguing for unfettered free markets. He's pointing out the Dems' response has often been bad regulation.
True.
Horrendous zoning laws is one of the primary reasons we have a shortage of housing, but no one wants to fix it because housing price will crash. That is true, but like the problem with this is that all like these high-minded efforts to address
That's never happening, Destiny. Adobe is a curse on humanity. The problem is that Steve Jobs died too early. We need to make Demolition Man, where Steve Jobs is brought back to life, okay? He killed Flash when he was alive. He didn't have enough time to kill PDFs. If we would have just had him for 5 more years, maybe he could have gone after him. Maybe.
Things like bad housing policy will ultimately run up against like a big enemy that abundance liberals are never willing to deal with. And that's corpos. Like at the end of the day, they answer to wealth. You can talk a big game about being willing to really take on the challenges with the housing industry, bring down housing costs, whatever else. Corporations will inflate those housing prices as much as they can get away with. You might be able to do in Austin, Texas, and bring rent down on aggregate 16% over the course of 5 years by building a bunch of new housing. But don't worry, those rents will go right back up. You're fighting an uphill battle against an enemy.
I have a Voush-like friend that recently rallied against Trump's saying it's an extension of Reaganomics. Yeah, I mean, like, could I say? I'm trying to think, because when I think of like who would be allowed in the coalition, Voush, I believe, is an actual like light socialist, and I think we can probably break bread, maybe I think, with like socialist light types, but not with ML types, not with the Marxist-Leninists. So like the Hassan types are too far, too anti-liberal, too authoritarian. They are not allowed. They're not invited to the cookout, okay? But I think the Voush types, like the light socialist types, I think are. Wait, so these pumps now, this one water thing will feel all of this? It's good? How many times did Voush betray you? Well, I'm not talking about him personally. I'm just meaning like this political ideology.
Be much more powerful than you, you know? And we're at a crucial, we're at like a boiling point here now, because now the capital class has mobilized so aggressively and so openly and so malevolently against the interests of the average American in the form of this like open oligarchy. It's no longer acceptable to pretend that we can just make marginal tweaks around the edges. You need like a
This is like the thing that irritates me so much, and it makes me miss the the progressives with the multidimensional analysis of like, why do people feel the way that they do? It's not just class. It has never been just class. That's so one-dimensional. You're in a country that oh, well, this is a really old argument, but somebody in chat asked me earlier, what's a debate where you had your mind changed a lot since you feel like you're right on everything, blah, blah. One thing that I debated a guy, I think it's a guy I don't even like anymore. Was it, hold on, I'm trying to think of who it was. It was the black guy who played piano. I want to say Phalanx, but it's not Phalanx. What the f was his name? Somebody say it. Fanatic. That was it. It was either Fanatic or it was somebody else I debated. It might not have been. It might have been somebody else who brought up the idea that like America invented black as like a category of like skin color, which the face of that argument, it sounds absurd. And I think he didn't phrase it in the most eloquent way. But it is actually true that I think America, for the first time, invented these very rigid concepts of whiteness and blackness, and that there is an interesting progressive analysis where white was created as a category, especially in America, as a means of excluding people, right? If you're white, you're all right. If you're not, then you're snot. I can't think of a clever phrase, right? But like Italians and Irishmen, when they were finally included in the categories of white, they were cool, and everybody who's not white is not cool. But like this type of analysis falls apart. You can't like critically analyze economic relationships in the United States if you only focus on class, right? If you only focus on class, the Tulsa race riots, wouldn't happen. Black Wall Street wouldn't be destroyed because these people have money. Why the fuck would you destroy people with money, right? The capital class should move in and do something about that, but they won't, because there are other drivers to people besides just class and just money. And I feel like the early progressive ideology with regards to intersectionality kind of like had this more right than the socialists or the Marxist-Leninists that'll come up now like, it's all about class and capital and the bourgeois. And it's like, I don't think so. It's too oversimplified. If a technocracy could work with people staying within their specializations to maximize efficiency and productivity, can we implement Plato's idea of having a trained political class / trade? Maybe, who knows? Thanks, Baggy Sky 97. I'll read that book right now on stream. Thank you for linking this book. I got it. Thank you. How many pages is it? Hopefully less than 500. Well, let's go. Thank you.
Front. And I agree, like, neoliberals aren't bad because they've never had good policy propositions. As a matter of fact, neoliberals, or I guess liberals broadly, often know more about policy wonkery than leftists do, which has always been a weakness of the left. My issue with them isn't necessarily the policy tweaking. My issue is that all of that policy tweaking is ultimately subservient to a larger class dynamic, which they refuse to fight. You know what I mean? Yes, 100% agree. You can't affect a lot of these changes until you remove big business from policymaking. Yeah, okay. No, I agree with you completely. But I am willing to acknowledge the importance of, like, addressing zoning laws. Holy shit, the Abundance Liberal Conference was sponsored by...
Wait, this is a troll tweet, right? Hold on. It's okay. That's good for us. No. That's good for us. That's good for us. That's good for us, guys. That's good for us. You guys should be happy, okay? If Aiden Ross got unbanned, then certainly my unban is on the way, okay? We're up bigly right now, guys. We're up so big. We're up so big, okay?
By venture capitalists and a co-brother created...
Have you submitted your appeal? Okay, I submitted a joke appeal like 2 weeks ago, but they haven't denied it yet, which is interesting because normally they deny them instantaneously. So, you know, who knows? We'll see. Now I feel like I shouldn't have written a joke appeal, though, so...
Nonprofit? Yeah, sounds about right. The new centrist push to regain control of the Democratic Party. You know, Will Stansel was on Twitter saying he doesn't like this abundance liberal shit. That, to me, that's like that's a canary in the coal mine, ain't it? Right there. Like, if you have even the big hitter liberals...
Oh, that's such a good point. You can prove Destiny's point here by asking why trickle-down economics is nonsense, but Trump's tariffs will raise prices even though they're taxed on the company. Yeah, if we think that trickle-down economics is real, where companies will pass down their good fortunes to their workers, then shouldn't tariffs mean they'll pass down the cost to their workers and customers too? Why would we expect them to give away their winnings in the form of tax cuts, but eat their losses in the form of tariffs, right? Yeah, I don't know.
In the coal mine, ain't it? Right there.
The joke appeal isn't it a joke that you'll get unbanned, or were you actually memeing in the appeal? I just copied the script at the end of The Matrix 3, where Neo says that he's the only one who can kill Agent Smith, but I replaced Neo with me and Agent Smith with Asmongold. So, good luck.
Like, if you have even the big hitter liberals, the big hitter, like, posters, being like, no, I don't think so. You will get the commie blocks, and you will thank us for them when we decommodify housing. Here, I want to finish this. Just seen too much buzz. It's a very online thing, but it's just...
I know I used to repeat this talking point. I'll say it again, okay? And maybe there was something I was misunderstanding, okay? But the European country that I probably know maybe the most about maybe is probably Sweden, obviously because my ex-wife's from Sweden. The thing that I used to hear from her is that so they have forms of public housing. I believe that every single person in Sweden, I think, is guaranteed some sort of very low rent place to live. However, I think the way that she would say this in English is she'd call these contracts. However, if you wanted to live in a place like Stockholm, the wait list for that is like 20 years. Unironically, it's like 20 years long in order to inherit or get a contract or to be assigned to a place to live here. So you could go live in some random place nobody cares about. But if you want to live in any of the big cities, you're waiting over a decade to get to live. So it's like, yeah.
It's important to not let these backstabbers get in the way of actual solution making, you know?
So what are some of the policies that you think that they should be pushing towards that maybe they're missing? Because we've heard from the likes of, you know, Pete Buttigieg, who had said that he thinks that there's too much focus on identity politics within the party.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's somebody who may have his eyes towards 2028. I mean, what is the current crop of Democrats? What are they missing in this conversation?
Look, 10 to 30% of Americans are self-employed. They are contractors. They're
Wait, hold on. What? I'm sorry.
Look, 10 to 30%.
First of all, that's a huge range. 10 to 30%. That's a big range, number one. I might believe that on the lower end, that like 5 to 10% are self-employed, because that's going to include, I think, every single Uber and DoorDash person. And it might include a lot of people that do trade work. I don't know how common it is for them to be employed by a company versus just to be contractors, but
of Americans are self-employed. They are contractors, they're gig workers, they're Uber drivers. Neither party does anything to help those folks, to market to them. They look more and more like America. They are the base of the Democratic Party.
I don't know if anybody has more solid numbers on this, but I always feel like the gig work thing is just dramatically overemphasized. It's nowhere near as popular or as common as people say that it is, but I don't know, man, I could be wrong.
Democrats barely talked about them, and they're being crushed by both a lack of support from welfare, from social.
Didn't Biden's labor or the NLRB, didn't they extend additional protection? No, there was a Biden era push for like the recognition of like Uber drivers.
Self-employed workers, non-ag, is this in millions? Thousands. Okay. Yeah, okay. That's what I meant. Sorry, not in millions, because that would be 6 billion people or whatever. So in thousands, does that mean that there were 6 million self-employed workers? If this is in thousands, that's what this would mean, right? Oh, holy shit. Wait, I'm sorry. I just realized how far back this chart went. So the number of gig workers, or the number of self-employed workers we've had, has been steady basically since we started measuring it, since 1946. This new chart is ratio to total employees. What? This is just thousands of persons. Oh, you linked something different. Oh yeah, and if anything, the ratio I imagine we're going to see go down. Yeah. Because adding people to the workforce. Huh. Okay, so this like huge gig economy or whatever, I don't think this is real. I've never seen numbers to substantiate this. I just don't think this is a real thing.
Drivers as workers rather than contractors. There's been a push for that broadly. Now, I agree. You know, the abuse of contractors is a real problem with our economy.
It's not.
Welfare,
it's a problem insofar as like people are abusing them. That's bad, but I don't think it's like a widespread huge thing or whatever. In the entirety of Europe, there is social housing. The problem is that there is not social housing enough build. People who earn a lot stay too long in social housing. Refugees are getting priority. These factors are what cause the following effect. You want a social house. In my country, 11-year waiting period. Since refugees get to skip the line, it's a major reason of the rise of the right wing, anti-immigration stuff in Europe. Don't they usually put all the refugees in a certain area, though? I don't think they just ship them into any open housing unit, no? In European countries? I could be wrong on that. But my understanding is usually they're all like in the same kind of area. But one thing you have to consider, too, if you're European, your guys' standards for housing are way different than American standards for housing. Like, it feels like the average American college grad feels like they should be able to own a house in a major city by the time they're 25. And I think in Europe, people don't expect to own houses in major cities unless they're either absurdly wealthy in retirement or like on the very, 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 very far outskirts or like in a different city. And then in terms of like the sizes for housing and everything too, I think Americans just have way different expectations than Europeans generally.
They're taxed higher and they don't get the benefits that employees get, and they're being crushed by monopolists and tech platforms that they work for. The average somebody selling products on Amazon has seen their fees go up from 10% to 30%. These people need help. Democrats should be their champions. You know, we need healthcare reform where we can regulate the prices that are paid to conglomerate monopoly healthcare providers that could boost the incomes of the average family $2,000-3,000 right off the bat.
This is corporatism, not capitalism argument. Yeah, also you're really arguing around the margins. Like the country is being raped to death by oligarchs. I like the fundamental solution here is not like reform of contracting law. I agree that should be a part of it, but it matters a lot what you define as the central solution. And I'm sorry, like at these days, the lines are really clear.
Do you actually think there's a lot of racism in the EU right now, or is it mostly overblown? There is, but it's like, it's different. Like people's motivations to be racist and everything it's a lot different. The way that racism manifests in different European countries is also different as well, right? Like I think like Italians and Spaniards are racist against like old bongers that go down during vacation or retirement, or everybody in the West will be racist against like Poles or people coming from Eastern European for seasonal work, or people especially in Central and Southern Europe are racist against like Romani people because they walk around with dead children begging for money. It's just like insane shit. Or like it's just a whole bunch of, or people in the Balkans are racist against anybody that lives within 15 miles of them. I'm just kidding. Like it's just different. It is an issue. I think the biggest issue that I've heard people keep bringing up, is it Denmark as an example of this, where the far right hasn't able to gain a foothold? One of the problems in Europe for a while, and it was progressive ideology that fucked with this, was an unwillingness of people on the left to give voice to grievances around immigration issues, and trying to bury them and ignore them and not ever confront them doesn't work. You could argue that Biden did similarly with the border in the United States, like just wasn't giving voice to the issue enough. Because when you don't talk about it, you see that issue to the other side and you let them claim it. So
you can't stand up and say the problem with our society is like oligarchy, capitalism, unfettered power of the capital class. Then I don't fuck with you. It's just really obvious now is the thing. Even liberals are saying it. Even liberal politicians, not far left Democrats, but moderate Democrats are going up there and saying like oligarchy's out of control. These ultra wealthy people are buying power. The Trump's cabinet of billionaires, Elon Musk, shadow president, et cetera, et cetera. And I know those people aren't socialists, but at the very least, yeah, this guy did acknowledge it, by the way, with the oligarchy. But like, do you think that's going to be fixed by addressing contracting law? Maybe that'd be nice, but I wouldn't define an ideology around it. You know, like I'm a huge proponent of reforming zoning laws in many, I suppose, all American cities to whatever extent possible.
okay, should I just read the wiki? Is the way that you go to other planets is to add a space platform and then shoot that space platform over to another planet? Is that how you're supposed to do it? Or am I supposed to like launch a rocket with me to go to the other planet? Space platforms are trains in space. You need thrusters and shit on the platform. Okay, do I ever go to the other planet? Engines on a space platform. Okay.
Possible. But if I created a political movement called like abundance, urbanism, and defined it in opposition to progressive leftism, wouldn't I be doing everyone a disservice? Could leftist thought not incorporate reform of contracting law, the abuse of workers? Because it already does. Left progressives already talk about, contractors not getting the benefits of employees, corporations abusing contractor law. They actually
hate how right-wing moved the responsibility for immigration mishaps on left-wing when they were in the government. Oh, I can't speak to any European problems with any degree of specificity because I don't follow European shit. And I try not to speak about shit I'm clueless on. So
they debated this
I try not
on
to.
Breaking Points.
Sometimes.
We
have to.
Joining us now, great friend of the show, Jarek Thompson, and he is out with the new...
Holy shit. Mark Zuckerberg, after he stops out of, or gets out of the human redesign box, that's him in the middle.
book, which is just seemingly everywhere, Abundance, that he co-authored with Ezra Klein. So the theme of the book is, quote, to trace the history of the 21st century so far, to trace the history of unaffordability and shortage after years of refusing to build sufficient housing. America has a national housing crisis. He goes on that Abundance explains our problems today are not the results of yesteryear's villains, rather one generation.
Yo, so that one guy is just completely full of shit, huh? The Live Forever guy. I feel like I've seen more and more stuff from him that just makes me question. It seemed like he had like a cool idea initially, and I'm always a big fan of people who turn stuff over to science for more research, but it seems really cringe. Wait, why the f did you take that out? F you.
Generation solutions have become the next generation's problems. The book actually seeks to put forward some solutions. So, Derek, just at the top here, for people who aren't familiar with abundance discourse, there's been quite a bit here that is online. First, just tell us like why you.
It's the creepy guy who talked about his son's erections at night. Oh, he talked to Dr. Mike?
I think initially we met because I think you were talking shit about me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I made a nice comment in return.
It was an incredibly awesome move.
Today I'm joined by Dr. Mike Israetel, who...
Holy shit. This guy is supposedly trying to optimize his life to be able to live forever because he thinks we're at a point in history where we might be able to live forever, which maybe is true. I don't know. But it sounds like he's like giving more and more into kind of like weird pseudoscience-y things, so...
You guys felt compelled to write the book, and then how
I just want to watch a bit.
The book, how the book is intended to be received. Is it a Project 2025? Is it a political answer? Is it all of the above? What is your guys' conception of it?
It's a great question.